going to play the second video. In this video, Svitlana will introduce and share her observation about the disinformation from Russia.
Not only VoxCheck changed, but also changed the Russian disinformation and its narratives. And in this table, I would like to show you how Russian narratives changed from before wartime to the what is going on in the present time. So here is just some examples. Sure, we have much more narratives of Russian disinformation, but it's, I guess, the main narrative that Russia used to prepare Russian audience, European audience, and partly Ukrainian audience to the start of the war. So the first narrative that previously Russia used in its media, that Ukraine is under external control. And it was different actors, like Ukraine is under United States control, under European Union control, or under NATO control. Then, after the war started, Russia changed this narrative that it's like European Union and NATO used Ukraine to attack Russia. And as you know, each narrative consists of many fakes and many disinformation cases. So the main disinformation cases that Russia used to prove that false narrative, it's that NATO has military bases in Ukraine that were prepared for attacking of Russia, or that all the military assistance to Ukraine and all the weapons that we receive from our partners, we need to attack Russia in this like NATO and Russia war. And finally, that, as mentioned, that Ukraine is like a battlefield between NATO and Russia. And actually, yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin also said that in his speech to the so-called Day of Victory that celebrates now only in Russia. Actually, it's a day of victory in the World War II, and we thought that yesterday Russia would say something about their victories in Ukraine. But in fact, Russia has absolutely no victories in Ukraine. They couldn't occupy all the Ukrainian territory. They lose in the informational war, and they just now killing their country and their economy by this ongoing war. So the only thing that Vladimir Putin could say that it's not now the special operation, so-called special operation, with that Russia came to Ukraine, but it's like a war between NATO and Russia. So it's just another justification for that war. And it was just a justification because Russia has actually no victories to talk about at their victory day. Another big narrative, I guess it's the biggest narrative that Russia used previously, was that Ukraine is a failed state. And they detailed its narrative now, during the ongoing war, that Ukraine will be divided into several parts. Some parts will go to the Russia and another parts will go to Poland. And to prove this narrative, Russia used such fakes like Poland wants to occupy Lviv region. Lviv is a city on the west of Ukraine, and then Poland wants to occupy all the west of Ukraine. That is absolutely false, because Poland has never ever tried to occupy Ukraine. It was only Russia who tries to occupy Ukraine since 2014. And another case that Russia used to prove its false narrative is that Ukrainian authority has already surrendered south and east of Ukraine. These regions is now those regions where we have the most hard battlefields, but in fact there is no proofs that Ukraine authority surrendered these regions. It's only trying of Russian propaganda to demoralize Ukrainian society and to it's just their efforts to win in the informational war, but it's not more than efforts. In fact, people do not believe to Russian propaganda, and Ukrainians know very well that our authority didn't surrender south and east of Ukraine, and the battlefields are going on. Another big narrative is that armed forces of Ukraine killed civilians in Donbas region. It's east of Ukraine that was occupied by Russia in 2014. And since 2014, Russia again and again says that it's only armed forces of Ukraine who kill civilians and destroy the buildings there. But it's absolutely lie, because it's just a good question. Why we have to kill one Ukrainian has to kill another Ukrainian? Just why? And why we have to destroy our buildings? There is no proof to that, and actually the war started 8 years ago because Russia occupied the parts of eastern Ukraine. And now, since the beginning of the full war, since 24th of February of this year, Russia started to say that armed forces of Ukraine kills now civilians and damage civilian buildings in the whole Ukraine. But it's still absolutely false information, because it's mostly Russians who destroy our cities and kill Ukrainians. And once again, to prove this narrative, Russia use such big fakes like that Bucha massacre. Bucha, it's a small town near Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. So like Bucha massacre, it was just a show made by Ukrainian propaganda to say that it was Russian armed forces who killed people. But in fact, there are many proofs, and there are many people who saw that it was Russian army who killed civilians in Bucha. Another big fake is about bombing of Mariupol maternity house. Mariupol is one of the hottest spots of this war. It's city on the southern east of Ukraine, and it's almost under occupation, unfortunately. And the last part of this city that is still not occupied by Russia is factory Azovstal, that is still protected by Ukrainian armed forces. So Russia says that two big attacks on Mariupol, it's bombing of Mariupol maternity house and destroying of Mariupol drama theater, they were also done by Ukrainian armed forces. But in fact, not only Ukraine, but the whole world understand and saw the proofs, the photos, the videos, and investigations that it was Russian forces who bombed Mariupol and its main buildings. And the main problem about maternity house and drama theater, why I use these cases here, because there was a lot of pregnant women in maternity house, and it didn't stop Russia from bombing of maternity house. Drama theater has a big sign, children, near that, not to be bombed by Russian armed forces, but it also didn't stop Russia from bombing the drama theater, where were almost 200, if I'm not mistaken, children and other civilians from Mariupol. And finally, another big fake by Russia is that Ukrainian armed forces using civilians as a live shield on Azovstal factory. As I told you, it's the last part of Mariupol that is not occupied right now. So actually our armed forces do not use people as live shield, but we have some documented proofs that it's Russian armed forces who use civilians as a live shield to counter-attack Ukrainian armed force. And going on to the next narratives, I will try to explain them quickly. So another really big narrative that Russia used years before the full war started, it's about Russians and Russian-speaking people in Ukraine are discriminated by Nazis. And all these mentions of Nazism in Ukraine, it was one of the justification why Putin declared the war against Ukraine. Like Russia is now came to save us from Nazism. In fact, there is no Nazism in Ukraine. Moreover, it's forbidden in Ukraine. But Russia trying since 2014 prove that there are Nazis who changed their authority through Revolution of Dignity in 2014, and now do not allow people even to talk in Russian, to watch Russian films and to listen to the Russian music. It's absolutely false, and I just can provide you with my personal example. We really have a kind of language problem in Ukraine. Part of Ukrainians speak Ukrainian and part of Ukrainians speak Russian. It's just a historical issue. And me and my family are speaking Russian. But I can also speak Ukrainian. It's absolutely okay for me. We understand both absolutely fine. But Russia thinks that people here in Ukraine are not allowed to speak in Russian. And my personal example is proof that we are allowed to speak Russian. It's just about our authorities who are really not allowed to speak Russian, just because Russia is aggressor towards Ukraine since at least 2014. Also, we are absolutely allowed to contact with Russian culture. We can listen to the Russian music, we can read Russian books, or even watching the Russian films. It's just a personal decision of each person to contact or to not contact the culture of country aggressor. But there is no forbiddance in Ukraine about that, in fact. Another big narrative that Russia used a lot since the full war started, it's that the United States made a network of secret bio-laboratories in Ukraine. It was, I guess, one of the most stupid fakes made by Russian propaganda, because no one can really believe in that, and people only laugh at these fakes about secret biolaboratories. Russia even tried to say that COVID-19 came from Ukraine, from these secret biolaboratories. But to be honest, this narrative started almost 3 years ago, and now, during the ongoing war, Russia trying to prove that on the base of these biolaboratories, Ukraine was preparing chemical or biological weapon that can harm only the Slavic nation, that is absolutely unscientific, that cannot be proved by any scientific experts. And another point is about nuclear weapon. Like, we are preparing nuclear bombs on our nuclear plants and stations. Actually, yes, we have nuclear plants and stations, but Ukraine, under its international regulation, is forbidden to creating the nuclear weapon. So it's only Russia who can use nuclear weapon in this war, but Ukraine just not preparing any nuclear weapon. And if summarize all these fakes about chemical, nuclear, and biological weapon, it's really anecdotal, to be honest, because on the one hand, Russia says that we are really weak country, we cannot live without Western assistance, our economy is weak, we do not have money even for paying people good pensions or salaries. But on the other hand, we can create chemical, nuclear, and biological weapon. And just the question where we got so much money for all that. It just shows that Russian propaganda debunk one its fakes by creating another its fakes, because they absolutely counter to each other. And the last two examples of narratives that I would like to show you, it's about that Ukraine depends on international financial aid. I have just mentioned that Russia claimed that Ukraine is a weak country with weak economy, and we cannot live without, for instance, European Union financial aid. And now they transform that in narrative about Ukrainian refugees, that they are also using European aid only to their advance, and that Ukrainian refugees, in fact, did not go from a war from Ukraine, but they are just trying to find a better life in Europe. Once again, you can see the cases that Russia used to prove that claim, that Ukrainian refugees are not thankful for European help, they just destroying European economy. And another very dangerous, in fact, fake created by Russian propaganda, that Russian Federation can save Ukrainians by evacuating them to Russia. But in fact, there is no evacuation of Ukrainians to Russia. It's only deportation. And deportation is another war crime that Russia is doing during this war. So if you see news that Russia evacuate Ukrainians to Russia, it's only about war crimes, about deportation. And finally, about internally displaced people. So as you know, part of Ukraine was occupied by Russia since 2014, and some people decided in 2014 and years after that to go to another Ukrainian cities. Russia trying to prove that Ukraine didn't take care of these internally displaced people. And now, as many Ukrainians evacuated to the west of Ukraine as more safety regions of Ukraine, now Russia claims mostly that the west of Ukraine doesn't want to take care on internally displaced people. And to prove that, once again, Russia use fakes that, like, these IDPs are destroying economy of the west of Ukraine, they acting as tourists, and again, about the cases of deportation, like it was better if these internally displaced people would better go to the Lugansk or Donetsk People Republic to receive better life. Lugansk and Donetsk People Republics are occupied territories of Ukraine on the east of Ukraine. And actually that war started because Russia decided to recognize these republics and to help them fight in Ukraine. That is why Russia invades to Ukraine. But in fact, there is no more country in the world, including Ukraine, who recognize this People Republic. In fact, it's just occupied territories of Ukraine.
好，那接下来就是第一个问题是来自资策会的资安所的经理杨顺清，顺清。
大家好，不好意思，我用中文问一下我的问题啊。那很感
那
谢。
顺清要麻烦你就是帮我开麦克风，然后帮我开镜头，然后也跟大家自我介绍。那待会都很欢迎大家就是先分享你听完之后的心情或感想，或者是要对 Svitlana 就是分享的你的个人意见，然后再来问您的问题。
大家好，我是资策会的杨顺清。那我们这边，资策会其实是政府资助的一个资通科技的研究单位。那我在这个资策会里面是做那个有关不实讯息的研究。那很感谢这个讲者跟我们分享很多，在俄罗斯的一些在乌克兰的不实讯息的一些论述。那其实蛮多论述在台湾都可以看到很类似的叙述，比如说，台湾有一些团体，他可能经常接受来自中国的论述，比如说，在战争的时候呼吁军队不要抵抗啊，或者说，统一之后他会保障一些退休金之类的论述。那我这边想要请教讲者的是有关，因为很难过的是乌克兰现在正在遭遇战争嘛，可是台湾其实还没有。那以乌克兰的角度来讲，是不是有一些建议？比如说，我们在什么时候应该采取什么反制的措施？因为去防止这种不实讯息造成的伤害或降低它的伤害，就是有一些超前这些不实讯息的影响。这样。谢谢。
OK。慧安要麻烦你帮我翻译。
Okay, so this is Hui An from Taiwan VoxCheck Center. So Mr. Yang Shunqing, he's from Institute for Information Industry, which is related to Taiwan government from Economy Ministry. So he say like, thank you for your sharing. And as a person, he worked on also disinformation, also related to Taiwan and China. And he also sees there's a very similar narratives in Taiwan, which you just share, like what you have in Ukraine. So now, like, also very, very sorry to see that Ukraine is facing this Russian invasion. And he's wondering if you have also some suggestions for Taiwan society or Taiwanese people, like which kind of action we can take to really stop or to really mitigate the harm the disinformation could cause? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. It's really good point to think about. But first of all, what I would like to add that when we did this pre-recording, our team also worked on research of Russian propaganda in Europe, especially in Italy and Germany. We released the database about that. Summer, may I share it in the chat that all participants can see that?
Sure.
Yeah, and I share it now in the chat. It's database propaganda diary about Russian disinformation in Europe, in Italy and Germany especially. And what it shows that Russia used the same narratives in Europe, in Ukraine, for its own Russian audience, and as I understood, if I understood correct, also for Taiwan audience and society. It means that Russia is trying to spread absolutely the same false narratives that almost any person in the world would think the same about Ukraine, about Russia, and about their roles in this war. The main positive signal is that the world is mostly do not believe in what Russia says. European audience, of course, is affected by these narratives, but they are mostly do not believe in them. Also, I hope you see the same trends in Taiwan, that yes, some people are affected, but mostly people are trying to reach checked and factual and correct information about the ongoing war. About what can be done, it's I guess the most efficient ways to fight Russian disinformation and misinformation, just Russian lies and fakes. It's trying to spread the information about Ukraine from only Ukrainian medias, from Ukrainian government, and from even Ukrainian fact checkers and non-governmental organizations. As not only VoxCheck, we have many such organizations in Ukraine, and they all are trying to check news about the ongoing war, and they even trying to make difference between what is really happening on the front line and what the Ukrainian official says. Because sometimes our government, our officials, they are talking only about wins, about victories, but the situation on the front line can be more difficult. It may be more hard, and it can be a hard battlefield right now, when the officials from the TV and news marathon are saying that we are winning and we are victorious in this war. It's still early to say about our victories. The war is going on, and we have to see the real situation. So to fight what Russia says and its disinformation, I think it's okay to try to share the information from Ukrainian news media outlets and from Ukrainian non-governmental organizations. Also, it's interesting to try to share the information from some journalists, international journalists that making more deep research about ongoing battlefields. I mean, some researchers and journalists like Bellingcat and Oryx. They try using OSINT to find as much proofs as possible for losses and victories of each side of this war. It also can give you additional information about the battlefields that is going in Ukraine. But if you want to talk about some governmental decisions, the situation in economy with reforms in Ukraine, of course, you may better reach what the Ukrainian officials says, because they are providing this factual official information about the situation with economy. And also we always had really good statistical and official information to compare with Russia or Belarusian information. Their statistics, no one can believe in their statistic. It can be absolutely false, despite it calls like an official statistics. In Ukraine, we have absolutely different situation. We have the statistics and all the information that is shared in accordance with international rules of some statistical information. Yeah, and once again, I hope you can look through this database and compare once again what Russia spread in Europe, in Ukraine, and what it spread in Taiwan.
Thank you. And the next audience is Zhenling, Peng Zhenling 老师.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Yes. Thank you very much for your valuable sharings. And I think your experience provided a very good lesson for Taiwan in defending our democracy. And based on your second part of sharing, which highlights the importance of information war, and we know that the information war started long before the real war or military conflict, either in Ukraine or in other areas around the world. And the goal of this narrative was produced by Russia is to justify its military action. So my questions are the following. Why are Ukrainian people not influenced by Russian narrative or disinformation attack? And why Ukraine is successful in the information war during the current conflict? And what's the conditions and the efforts in Ukraine except for fact-checking efforts? Yeah, because we know that it demands a lot of efforts and the other stakeholders to work together. So yeah, because it's very valuable lesson for us. So I want to know from your opinion, what do you think about the crucial element or conditions in your country? Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot for your questions. Firstly, I saw your message also in the chat about the democracy. Actually, the one of the main targets of Russian propaganda is to destroy democracy, not only in Ukraine, but also in Europe. And why I also share to you the link with this database of Russian disinformation in Italy and Germany, because that how I think it works. Russia is trying to influence the democracy, not only in Ukraine, but also in European countries, and to make people there do not support their government that is going to support young democracies as Ukraine. So I even can call it that Russia is trying to influence the election processes in Europe, to make Europeans do not support those politicians who support Ukraine in this war, who gives us financial and military aid, and then just to make more support to those politicians who are pro-Russian and who support support Russia in this war. By this propaganda, Russian just trying to change the democratic processes in Europe. As about Ukraine, Russia is trying for years to destroy the positive effects of reforms that we are conducting since 2014. We had a lot of reforms, a lot of changes in healthcare field, in public finances field, in field of education, of energy sector, and all these changes were aimed to make Ukrainian economy stronger, to make the deficit of our governmental budget less, and to make Ukrainian economy and political field closer to European as a part of our Euro integration. And what was trying to do Russia for since at least 2014, you're absolutely correct that Russia started its informational war even earlier, even before, I would better say, right after Ukrainian received its independence. Since 1991, Russia is trying to occupy us, at least on informational field. So, fortunately, Russian informational forces lose in this war because this part of Ukrainians who support Russian ideas about that all reforms and all changes that we are doing in Ukraine for the last 8 years, they are incorrect. This percentage of Ukrainians are really small. They can't even make many changes in our politician fields by elections. And since 24th of February of this year, since the start of full-scale war, I guess it's absolutely small. It's really little percentage of people who are still believe that Russia came here to save us. The biggest part of Ukrainians, the absolutely biggest part of Ukrainians, are now not affected by Russian propaganda. And answering to your questions, why Ukrainian not influenced by Russian narratives and disinformation? Because people can see proofs of that Russia is an aggressor by their own eyes. As I told at the beginning of this panel, that few days ago I saw from my window the missile attacks in the Dnipro district, and there are millions of Ukrainians now who also saw on their own eyes how war is going in their cities. They lose not only their job and income, but some people lose family members, lose their homes, all that they have before the war started. They now have to start absolutely new life with absolutely nothing in another city. And all these people will never again believe in Russian lies, because they see the results of Russian propaganda. They see that war by their own eyes. And that is why also Ukraine is successful in the informational front, because because everybody is now understanding that it's not Ukrainians who are trying to kill another Ukrainians. It's not Ukraine who is trying to occupy another cities. Actually, I would say that everything that is going on the battlefront, on the battlefield, is the same on the informational front. Those who is an aggressor won't be ever believed by the society. And also why Ukraine is successful, it's because now Ukrainians raise their critical thinking and media literacy. Actually, before the war started, we had a really low level of media literacy of Ukrainians. Some social polls showed that only 11% of Ukrainians have really high critical thinking and media literacy fact-checking skills. But now, I guess, if we set another social pool, we will see that at least more than a half of Ukrainians have such high media literacy and fact-checking skills, because people are now want more than ever to reach factual and correct information. Now people understand that correct and clear information can even save their lives, not only provide them with some good or bad news, but even save their lives. When it's a question of will you be alive for the next hour or not, you really want to find good proved information. And finally, about the conditions and efforts that help fact-checking in Ukraine. A year ago, in Ukraine, Ukrainian government made 2 governmental fact-checking centers. The one is Center for Countering Disinformation, that is a part of Council of National Defense and Security of Ukraine, and another is Center for Strategic Communication and Informational Security, that is a part of Ministry of Informational Policy of Ukraine. So we have 2 governmental structures that also fight in Russian disinformation and fakes in Ukraine. And also we have a really strong civil society, many non-governmental organizations who are fighting disinformation for years. And the biggest support for us, the financial support, is coming from international donors, like from USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, International Renaissance Foundation. It's a part of Open Society of George Soros. It's also an interesting thing because many representatives of civil society of Ukraine receive a help from Foundation of George Soros. That is why Russian propagandists are calling us we do everything that George Soros tell us. That is absolutely incorrect, because we are working on defending democracy, as you told. That is why we received the financing from not only George Soros foundations, but also from other foundations in Ukraine. As about the support for fact-checking efforts, it's mostly about international financing from international donors. We do not receive any governmental help, any governmental financial support. We don't even have in Ukraine the mechanism to finance non-governmental organizations, especially who works with fact-checking. Also, we think that if even we receive the financing from Ukrainian government, we think our audience won't be okay with that, because they will think that government pay us to make us say what they want us to say about is our government say lies or truth. So even if we have a possibility to receive money from government, I'm not sure that we are going to competitive for this grant from government. Yeah, that's all from my side. I hope I answered your questions. Thank you once again.